Howdy ASC Dallas. This is Jonathan Brower, your ASC Dallas branch president. Welcome to the March virtual branch meeting. Thank you for joining us this month. Before we begin the main program, we have a few branch announcements.
Howdy everyone, I'm Samantha Bell, the Younger Member Chair, as well as the co-host of the Bridge program. Today, after the general meeting, we will be hosting our third Bridge program titled Virtual Meetings 101, which will be hosted by our very own ASC Dallas branch president, Jonathan Brower from LA Fuse Partners. In the presentation, he will highlight virtual meeting etiquette, as well as how to improve in how we host and partake in online meetings. Afterwards, we will open the floor for anyone and everyone to share helpful Microsoft Teams tips and tricks with one another. Again, the meeting will be from 1 to 2 p.m. Check out our website, our newsletter, and our social media accounts to access the link to join the meeting. I look forward to seeing everyone there.
Hello, my name is Brad Russell, your Dallas Chapter ASC Scholarship Chair, and I wanted to give you an update on this year's scholarship, the GB Man Scholarship. This is a scholarship awarded to high school senior students who attend school in the Dallas branch region, which includes Collin, Cook, Dallas, Denton, Ellis, Kaufman, Navarro, and Rockwall counties, and who will be attending an institution of higher learning in the 2021 fall semester in pursuit of a degree in civil engineering. The deadline for the scholarship application is 5 p.m. Friday, March 26. You can find information about the scholarship, both the application form and the reference forms, on the Dallas ASCE website, which is dallasasce.org/branch_scholarships. At the bottom of the application form, you're giving a mailing address and an email address to send the completed forms. I wish everyone applying good luck, and I look forward to receiving a number of applications to review again this year. Thank you.
Hi, this is Chad Ostrander. As this year's fundraising chair, I am proud to announce the sponsorship opportunities for 2021. Our virtual meeting sponsorships this year will include a 2 to 3 minute video by the sponsor company. This can be a produced marketing video if you have one available, or any other form of company promotion. Our virtual meetings during 2020 have consistently received over around 500 views per month, and they will stay up on our YouTube channel indefinitely. If your company is interested in sponsoring a meeting or the 2021 Scholarship Golf Tournament, please contact me at fundraising@dallasasc.org, or visit us online at dallasasc.org and navigate to become a sponsor. Thank you.
Howdy everyone, it's Samantha Bell again. This month, the ASC Dallas branch younger members are joining forces with the Dallas Young Professionals of the American Institute of Architecture, or AIA. We're going to be co-hosting our March virtual social entitled Rhyme Night this week on Thursday, March 11th from 5:30 to 6:30. For this social, we're going to be channeling our creative side and working in teams to create a clever rhyme with limited time. To join the meeting, please visit our newsletter, our social media accounts, as well as our website. It should be a lot of fun, and I hope to see everyone there.
As a reminder, the ASC Dallas branch virtual meetings will continue to be free to watch online via our YouTube channel. However, we are charging a $10 fee for the PDH certificates. The proceeds from these PDH certificate sales will be split evenly between the ASC Dallas GB Man Scholarship Fund and a rotating charity or nonprofit. This month, we will be donating to Our Calling, the organization that helped manage and lead the shelter at the Dallas Convention Center during last month's catastrophic winter storm. Last month, we were able to donate $925 each to the GB Man Scholarship Fund and the nonprofit organization Communities and Schools Dallas region. Thank you to all our members for your generosity and support. You can visit our branch website at www.dallasasc.org or click on the link in the video description below to pay for and obtain your PDH certificate. These PDH certificates will be available for purchase until the end of the month. We will now get started with the main meeting presentation. If you have any comments or questions during the presentation, you can type them in the chat to the right of the video. To introduce our main speaker, I will now pass it off to our ASC Dallas Branch Programs Chair, Carlos Valderrama.
Howdy, ASC members. Today I'm very excited to introduce Norma Mattei as our speaker for this March branch meeting. Norma Mattei is a professor and past chair at the University of New Orleans Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. She earned her bachelor's degree in civil engineering in 1982 and her doctorate in 1994 from Tulane University. Norma Jean has been part of the University of New Orleans faculty since 1995 and has been involved in AAC for more than 20 years in local, regional, and national leadership roles, including being elected in 2017 as an AACE president. She is a former Region 5 director and has served on AACE's Committee on Diversity and Women in Civil Engineering and the Committee on Licensure and Ethics. AACE has drawn on her expertise multiple times for a number of media relation activities, including an interview with NPR's Morning Edition on post-Hurricane Katrina conditions. In 2012, President Obama elected Norma Jean as one of 3 civilians members of the Mississippi River Commission. And in that capacity, she helped oversee a drainage basin that covers 41% of the nation. I'll now pass it over to Norma Jean Mattei to give us a presentation on the Hard Rock Hotel collapse in NOLA.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be kind of with you and give you a little bit of information on a disaster that happened in my hometown. So I'm not sure if you're aware of a major failure that occurred of the Hard Rock Hotel that was being constructed in New Orleans and had some major issues that partial building collapse. So that's what we'll be talking about today. So a little bit about what the plans were for this hotel is what I'll begin with. Then I'll discuss and show a video of the October 12th, 2019 collapse itself. I'll give you an idea of where this construction site sits in the city of New Orleans and how that location impacted the amount of time that it has taken to take this partially collapsed construction site down to ground. It is still not completely demolished. I'll go through the timeline of some major incidents. We'll then talk about a October 20th crane implosion, because the 2 tower cranes that were on the construction site were damaged in the collapse and had to be imploded and taken down because they were not structurally sound themselves after the collapse occurred. I'll talk about the April 2nd, 2020 OSHA preliminary citations. Then I'll talk about how we investigate disasters and perhaps some lessons learned, at least from my part. So away we go. So here's a photo of the hotel collapse right after it occurred. So I'm using my cursor, so I hope you see the cursor showing the easternmost tower crane, and then I'm showing now the bottom of the westernmost hotel crane. This street here that's running behind the building is Canal Street. Canal Street is well, New Orleans, when it was a younger city, Canal Street was the main, that was the main street where a lot of the larger department stores had their stores, because they didn't have anything like malls back then. So Canal Street runs between the French Quarter, which this site is right on the edge of, and the CBD, the Central Business District. So in the background, it would be the CBD. The street here that you see is Rampart Street. So just a little bit of orientation. I'm going to give you a better idea of where this thing sits in a minute. So next, because we have a lot of tourists that visit New Orleans, and in particular that visit New Orleans in the French Quarter, and because we now have the ability of carrying our phones that allow us to video while we're driving, there is a few videos of this disaster. So as the building collapsed, a few of these folks because they were just going down the street because they're excited to be in New Orleans and they're videoing. They just happened to be at the right place at the right time and thankfully, not too close. So this gentleman, I'm going to show you a video from Michael Dow. He uploaded this video. He stopped at a red light. See the traffic light? So he's in his car and he's videoing and he's going down down Rampart Street. And you can see the site right on the left. So this is his video, a clip from his video. It's going to run twice. Here's the tower cranes.
Oh my God.
That's the service elevator.
Oh my God.
Part of the building. So these, of course, hit the internet and also were run on both local and national and international news. So a lot of people were aware of this. This actually occurred when I was in Miami at the ASCE convention. So I was at a year before I was at the convention. It was in New Orleans, and during the convention we had the FIU bridge collapse in Florida. And so I was unaware. People kept on coming up to me and saying, "Did you hear about this? Did you hear about this? There was a major structural failure in New Orleans just now." And I went, "Oh, no." So that's a video of the collapse. So a little bit about the project as it was intended. So I don't know if you can see in the upper right-hand corner is a picture of taken of that corner in the 1960s, and it's the old Woolworth building. And you can see right here an old car of that era going down Canal Street. That part of the city, and it's really in a prime location. It's on the edge of the French Quarter, and it's across the street is the CBD. In the foreground would be the Superdome a few blocks away. So, but this area had not been really as developed as the rest of the area around. And so the city was really entertaining ideas about 10 years prior of how to economically develop this area and make it a more vital part of the city, since it sits in such a prime location. So the developers, 1031 Canal Development LLC, so that's actually the site's address, 1031 Canal Street. They approached about a decade ago, approached the city and said, "We'd like to develop this area. We'd have to demolish this historic building, although it did not have a certification, as it's old and it has other buildings surrounding it that were also, immediately adjacent, that were smaller and also old, but never given a historic structure, a historic building designation. So nothing formal. So he wanted to build a entertainment complex. It wasn't going to be a high-rise hotel. And he got a permit, a conditional site permit, and it ultimately became this idea of a Hard Rock hotel that was much taller than initially envisioned, with a value of $85 million. So the developer was Kalis Companies. The contractor ultimately chosen was Citadel Builders, a local contractor. The structural engineer, Heaslip Engineering, a local structural engineering firm, and the architect, Harry Baker Smith Architects. The crane implosion cost about $5 million, and D.H. Griffin Wrecking and Lemoyne Disaster Recovery was involved in the crane implosion. And when we ultimately decided on a conventional demolition, and so I'll talk about how we came to how the city came to decide on a conventional demolition, because they did look at either a partial demolition or an implosion once it was determined to remove the building completely. A conventional demolition was settled on, and that's Kalb grading and Marshall wrecking. So this is an isometric rendering of what this hotel was ultimately supposed to look like. Right here would be canal, and behind the building would be rampart. So 18 floors, 350 hotel rooms, over 12,000 square foot of usable area for meetings. The bottom, and a little bit about the construction. The bottom 7 floors are reinforced concrete, and the top are structural steel framing. The bottom floors were supposed to be a parking garage with about 400 parking spots, with the lowest level, the first level, some retail space, and they ultimately were hoping to lure in a well-known restaurant to also take part of that first floor square footage. Here's some artist renderings. On the left one, you see the red streetcar peeping. This is Canal Street. The front would be Rampart. Across the street is the historic Sanger Theater. And here's another view. This is looking toward Canal, along Rampart in the other direction. So a little bit about where we are in Louisiana. So New Orleans is along the Mississippi, about 100 miles away from the mouth of the Mississippi, because the Mississippi meanders. This is the white here. I don't know if you can see the difference between the light gray and the white, but the white is Orleans Parish, which is the city of New Orleans proper. The gray is either rural area or suburban New Orleans. And this red box is the French Quarter, and this dot is the location of the hotel. So looking at a part of a map that a lot of tourists get when they come to visit, this red is the French Quarter. Here's the Mississippi. Oh, back again. Just wanted to mention the early part of the city was right around the river, and you can see that we're right in a loop of the Mississippi River, and that's why they call the city of New Orleans often the Crescent City. So back to our blow up. Here's in Rose is the French Quarter. Right here is where in this corner, this upper left of the French Quarter is where the hotel site is located. This street, north-south, is Canal. This is Rampart. Here's the Dome, so it's pretty close. Here's the CBD. So you've got the French Quarter has a Vieux Carré Commission that is jealously guards the historic nature of that location. So it's New Orleans is an old city, 1718. So the French Quarter doesn't have tall buildings. The only tall buildings allowed are on this block right here. So on that block, that is one side of Canal Street, because that was the main artery of downtown New Orleans. And so that's, and they are not, that block is not under the jurisdiction of the Vieux Carré Commission. That is under the jurisdiction of the Central Business District Business Commission. There's some redundant words there. So it's another commission, and they don't have as onerous requirements as the Vieux Carré Commission does in regard to ensuring that the historic nature of the French Quarter is maintained. So it's not as strict the historic preservation rules are not as strict along this corridor or on either side of Canal Street because it's a main business artery and has been so for actually over a century. Canal Street has a median in the middle. It's we call medians in New Orleans neutral grounds, and that's because on one side was the Creoles and the other side was the Americans, and this line was a line of demarcation, and that line between the two sides of the street was a neutral ground. So we call the medians neutral grounds, and when we are at a parade for Mardi Gras, you ask the person that you know on float number 10 or whatever they're on, are you on the driver's side or are you on the neutral ground side? It's just a little bit of native lingo. So there were some complicating factors because of the location of this site. When you look at demolition and implosions. So in the red here is the Hard Rock with the yellow cranes showing. Here's Canal Street. Here's Rampart. Right across the street here is the Sanger Theater, built in 1927. So there's some other smaller buildings, one immediately adjacent to this site. So butting up really nice and personal to the Hard Rock Hotel building. And some of these have a historic nature. So Junius Hart Music Company, McRory's Five and Dime, the Alamo Theater. There were sites where there were sit-ins. So this is a historic, these structures are historic. Some of them, such as the Sanger, having a formal designation, others not so much. So the Lowe State Theater has a historic designation. The former home of the Pickwick Club across the Canal Street, I believe, has a historic designation. These right here, they're historic, but they don't have a formal designation. Another issue, in February or March, depending on when Easter is, 40 days before that is Ash Wednesday, and Fat Tuesday or Mardi Gras is the day before Ash Wednesday. And that is the culmination of the Mardi Gras season. And we have about 3 weeks of Mardi Gras parades. The earlier ones are are mainly small floats and drawn by people. But about 2 weeks before Mardi Gras, you start having the major crews, and the most usual parade route for downtown actually goes really close. It goes to see this traditional. This is Zulu's route actually. So the red line is Zulu's traditional route, and they had to be rerouted in February of 2020. That Mardi Gras because of the Hard Rock not being completely demolished. And they went a little bit further out down Loyola and Basin Street. So lots of issues associated with this collapsed building and complicating the decisions surrounding how you are actually going to take the sucker down. So a little bit about the Sanger Theater. You see some beautiful photos. It's right across the street, Rampart Street, built in 1927. The architect was Emile Weil, and it got an Italian Baroque courtyard interior, and it was actually in the middle of a Cats production when the collapse occurred. Fortunately, the collapse occurred hours before the Saturday evening. So it occurred on a Saturday morning, and the Cats production was Saturday night. Of course, that area was blocked off, and Cats could not finish their run in New Orleans, nor could they access their costumes and their set. And they were supposed to be in a few weeks in Atlanta, beginning a multi-week run there. And they did, at the last minute, they were able to get in and get their things out. But that was one of the issues that early on had to be dealt with because of this collapse. So again, some of the historic nature, some of the historic sites. Here's the hotel. Here's one of the buildings right up close, another building and another building. These three buildings were actually taken down ultimately, much to the chagrin of the historic preservation societies in the city. We're looking, you'd be standing in the CBD looking into, you can see this is the French Quarter. So you can see not very many tall buildings, just along Canal Street you have tall buildings because of the historic nature of the French Quarter. So the timeline, October 2019 on the 12th, the building collapses on a Saturday. We implode the cranes on October 20th. It was imperative that these damaged cranes come down because they were leaning and they were continuing to increase in that lean. The city officials were monitoring the situation, and these tower cranes actually aid in their own erection, and they aid in taking themselves down. And so since they were damaged, and it was determined that it was unsafe for any crew to even be on the cranes towers or in the on any part of the cranes. The cranes had to be taken down in another way, and they were very tall. So, but it was imperative that this happen quickly, because in October we can sometimes still have hurricanes up until the 1st of November. We actually can have hurricanes and their associated high winds, or tropical storms with their high winds, or when you have a winter storm come in, and we're in the beginnings of the fall and winter, you can have a front come in, and we can have some pretty high gusts associated with a storm front coming into the city. So it was the highest priority to get these cranes down. We'll talk more about that. And at the time, this is early on. Not a lot was understood about just what the issues were, what caused the collapse, what was the integrity of the rest of the building. Actually, if there was issues with those upper floors that were steel frame, the reinforced concrete lower 7 with that parking garage, were they salvageable? So would this be a case for partial demolition? So then we hit Thanksgiving. Once we get into the October, November timeframe, we're on the edge of the tourist, ground zero in New Orleans, and there starts to be a lot going on. The location of this demolition site had to be secured, and traffic had to be rerouted because you couldn't have the streets that were immediately adjacent could not be used. So lots of issues associated with this. So once we get beyond the 1st of December, the city's starting to lean toward totally implosion. The mayor says, I want this down fast. I want it down fast. And they explored what the costs of imploding the building and taking it down fast. So partial demolition became not a question. It was no longer a viable option. We had Christmas, which means Sugar Bowl. Then we have Mardi Gras season. So when you're talking about this area, this is big tourist season. There's a lot going on. Do you want to have a lot of truck? They have not made the decision of how they're going to take the rest of the building down. So they're monitoring it, and they still have, of the 3 workers that died, 2 of them are still in 2 bodies are still in the building. Then we have COVID in mid-March, and the governor declares in March 22 for about 2 months a stay-at-home order that impacts everyone in the city except for people. So many workers were not deemed critical, and so you couldn't do as much as you would be doing anyway when it comes to demolishing the building. In April of 2020, on the 2nd, OSHA then they had been doing an investigation, taking a lot of, they'd gone on the site. They couldn't go into the building's upper levels because they were deemed unsafe, but they had a lot of interviews that they did, and they issued their preliminary citations. We'll go over them later on in this presentation. By now, the city has decided that implosion is going to be too costly, along with the developers. Implosion is going to be too costly, may impact the Sanger and the other historic buildings that were very close. And they were also worried about some of the major utilities that service the French Quarter and other parts of the city run down Rampart Street, which is in between, the demolition site and the Sanger Theater. And in fact, a piece of the crane actually ended up being flung into the air and impaling itself into a street, the street that's Bienville, I believe it is, right there almost to Rampart, and did break a sanitary sewer line that was immediately repaired, but it did not go into Rampart Street, thank goodness, because that's gas, that's electricity, that's telephone, that's water, that's storm drainage. It's a major, major route for a lot of utilities for the French Quarter and for other areas of the city. The demolition actually begins in mid-May of 2020. And they had planned on being complete in January of 2021. That was last month. Well, they got, if the weather permitted. In August, the last body was recovered, August 18th. In August, I think it's 25th, the city files suit against the developer to the tune of $12 million to cover the costs that the city has incurred in securing the location and all of the other costs. And finally, and again, I don't know if our viewers can see behind the boxes, but the last arrow is in October 2020. I actually gave this a similar presentation to the Rhode Island section in October, and the day before there was a fire, and again the site was in national news because there was a fire of some construction materials that were being removed, and someone who was using a torch to cut some of the steel so that some steel framing could be removed, actually put that lit those construction materials on fire, and there was a lot of smoke involved, but no injuries, thank goodness. So this is a picture of the pancake section along Rampart Street, showing those cranes. So now we're going to focus on the cranes, the crane implosion. So they were an immediate concern because of the high winds potentially occurring in the early winter in New Orleans, and not quite the end of hurricane season. Liebherr tower cranes from the Morrow fleet. One it was approximately 270 feet in the air, and the other 300 feet in the air, and they were damaged. You can see from this graphic illustration that I borrowed from Dan Swenson that here is the original tower crane configuration, and it is leaning. The Canal Street or westernmost crane was not leaning as much, but also damaged and also leaning. Each of these tower cranes has you can see them here and here, a 200-ton counterweight. The cab is not as heavy, but it's heavy, and you've got this horizontal part. And so how do you take these down? So an implosion was selected to be the route. So for the implosion, we had in the red a temporary evacuation zone, and in the orange a bigger zone, which was an exclusion zone that eliminated the no vehicles or pedestrians would be allowed. But if you were either in a hotel room or in your home or business, as long as you stayed inside for the duration of and there was a time duration, then you'd be okay. So here's some photos of the brave gentlemen putting the explosions. These black bags are full of explosives, and they're on a crane that is not a tower crane. So they're hanging from a cage. You can't see in on the leftmost photo as well as on the rightmost photo, because the cage that's being hung from another crane is the same color as the tower crane's tower. So, but you can see the guys putting the explosives on several different locations of this crane. So I Googled and found a nice graphic of, this might not be the exact tower crane, but it may be, it's close. And I put where these explosives were placed, because the idea was, see, these are pin joints, to explode these cables and these cables. Then this part where the counterweight is would fold down. This part would fold down. This part would disconnect, and then it would just, like an umbrella, just kind of fall down. Hopefully, if they had pushed it a little bit toward the river, which was into the demolition site, the cranes would fall on the building and not the other direction on Rampart Street. So there's a picture right as the explosion happened, and then now I have a video that I can run for you. So here is, it's going to be a video that shows the implosion of the crane, the tower cranes from this angle, and then another, the tail end of the video shows it from another angle, so that you can see that this is the Canal Street side. This is a busy thoroughfare, as is Rampart Street. And Rampart Street's totally closed here, and Canal Street was totally closed for this. And it's been, some lanes are open now. So let's start this. So it's gonna blow any minute. Watch the cranes and where the pieces go, and see if they fold down like an umbrella. They're folding. Oh, watch that east one. Oh, that's the part that got impinged into about 10 feet into a street very close to Rampart Street, so very close to all of those utilities. Very luckily, just one sanitary sewer line was impacted and able to be repaired pretty quick. So we're about to see from this side, the implosion, showing the Canal Street side crane and how it, if you notice, there it goes. So this is still hanging. This is a pretty big piece of steel, and it's just hanging off the top of the building on the mostly undamaged side, and then hanging over Canal Street. So you've got these major counterweights, though. So I think that this was, if from a 10 being a 100% great implosion to a 0 being, oh, we didn't even get the cranes down. This was closer to a 10. It didn't get all of the pieces of the crane down, but the cabs and the counterweights are now have been flung into the structure. The adjacent buildings suffered very minor damage. Windows blew out. Nobody got hurt, nobody got killed. So, and for the most part, the cranes are they're not as dangerous. This is the most dangerous piece, the piece that got hung up on this part of of the steel moment frame that is close. There's 3 steel moment frames. It got hung up on the steel moment frame that is closest to Canal Street. And it's hanging over Canal Street, as you can see. So here it is. These are the 3 moment frames. This moment frame closer to Canal Street. Canal Street's running this way. And this is hanging over Canal Street. So let's move on now to actually talking about the demolition of the Hard Rock. And it was decided to do it the old-fashioned piece-by-piece way instead of an implosion. So these are the sites of the 2 bodies. One was between the 8th and 10th floor, and then one they estimated between the 9th and 10th floors. So they knew the location of one because you could actually see some of but the other body was its exact location of that worker was less known. So here's this is pretty early on, but this shows the task. So there was a lot of traffic maintenance, some engineering services, and the demolition going into, I don't know if you can see this, but into the final cleanup, which would have been October of 2020. So moving to the OSHA preliminary citations. And so this is not a complete listing. I'm only looking at some of the citations against the contractor and the structural engineer that would be pertinent when it comes to looking at this structure and what caused the collapse. So a little bit about OSHA though. OSHA was created by Congress in 1970 by the Occupational Safety and Health Act. The whole reason behind it is to ensure safe and healthful working conditions for working men and women. So it does that by setting and enforcing some standards, and it provides training and outreach, education and assistance. Its enforcement, of course, is part of what the investigation that OSHA did for this event. The Act covers private sector employees and workers, and some public sector employees and workers. So because this was a private setting, OSHA, and 3 workers died, OSHA was the governmental agency that it was decided would do the disaster investigation. They would have done their own investigation anyway, but if this had been a transportation piece of infrastructure, so say a bridge, then NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, would have been the federal entity that would have done this investigation. If there had not been a loss of life, probably NIST would have been the agency that would have done the investigation. If it's a natural disaster such as a hurricane or an earthquake, ASCE and other sister organizations put together task force. National Science Foundation sometimes puts together a task force that goes in and tries to ascertain what happened and should we modify our standards and guidelines in order to try to mitigate the potential of having similar situations arise in the future. So is OSHA going to provide a comprehensive report? I still don't know that, the answer to that question with 100% confidence. OSHA, from what I can gather, OSHA, since their authority is really to ensure the safety of workers, it doesn't have anything to do with structural failures unless it is the failure has been a problem from the point of view of working men and women. So NIST may be asked later on to do a more comprehensive report. OSHA does not have a huge staff to do this, to do a major investigation as thorough as, say, NTSB or even NIST. So, but because there was loss of life, OSHA was the agency that immediately came on. Now, loss of work or life or severe injury, even with NTSB or ASCE and NSF, any kind of disaster, they would be coming in and doing an investigation. But they were the lead agency in this case because it's a private building, privately owned building, and because of the 3 workers dead. So a little bit about OSHA's categories of violations. So de minimis, really a technical violation, not really any implication on health and safety of workers. Other than serious is a non-compliance violation. There may be a fine, but no safety, no injury has occurred. Serious, however, is when there has been so non-compliance with regulations in regard to worker safety, and the employer possesses knowledge of an existing hazard. So there's an OSHA fine for that. Posting requirements, if the employer does not post safety documentation, there's an OSHA fine. Repeat violation is if you've got, this is the second or more in it, so it's a series of violations. It's a big OSHA fine. Failure to abate, another big and accrued OSHA fine, because in this case, the cited entity has failed to take action on a prior citation. And the worst case scenario is a willful violation. And this is a case where there was purposeful disregard to the safety or health of workers and is very serious. So if it's linked with an employee death, it can be considered criminal. And this is the violation that has the biggest OSHA fine. So there's quite a number of entities that were cited. I'm only going to look, and there was quite enough, there's a few more citations for the structural engineer and for the contractor. I'm only looking at a couple because these are more indicative of why this structure collapsed. So citation 1, item 1, serious type of OSHA citation. And I've boxed out the most important words, but if you read these, they're all wrapped around worker safety. So if you read NTSB or NIST reports, the language is not anything like this. So because the authority that OSHA as a governmental agency has is all about worker safety. So floor beams on the 16th floor were under-designed in load capacity. Western side exterior bay was not tied into a rigid portion of the structure from floors 9 through 15 between column lines 1 and 9. And the cantilevers on the 17th and 18th floors, which are the top 2 floors, exceeded the manufacturer's guidance for maximum spans. So definitely a structural related citation. Heaslip Engineers, citation 2, item 1, willful. This is all about the structural steel connections that were either inadequately designed, inadequately reviewed, or inadequately approved, or reviewed or approved, and that infected the structural integrity of those connections. So we'll move on to, and here's a photo that I took from an article in our newspaper, the Tom's-Picayune Advocate. Or actually this is from Channel 4 WWL, but it also, that shows some of the issues. This is on the other side. So this is on the river side, and to the right, you can see the beginnings of the failure on the North Rampart side. So let's look at Citadel Builders. So the contractor, citation 1, item 3 was a serious violation, and it talks about the employer failing to ensure drawings or plans for beam shoring. And we'll talk a little, I'll have another slide on beam shoring shortly. Oh, here it is. So I did not put the video here because it doesn't show up too good. So this is just a shot of the video, but it shows a shore piece of shore. This is a shore. This is the shoring. They could not. It's bent, and this gentleman is a Hispanic worker. This occurred on Saturday, and so it was not all of the workforce working, thank goodness. It was those that wanted to work overtime because they really wanted to get this hotel complete in time for in time for Mardi Gras 2020. And so this is, so in the video, you hear this gentleman taking a video of this bent piece of shoring and saying, look at this, Papo. He's evidently talking to Papo. Look at how it is bent already. They couldn't remove it because it's bent. It's too bent and it was under too much pressure. So there was a lot of discussion as to whether this indicated, so is this in evidence of a causal factor for the failure? From my point of view, if you think about it, this historic worker, a couple of days before the failure occurred, sees this, it upsets him, but did he talk to his supervisor? Did he feel empowered to talk to his supervisor? And would it have made any difference if the supervisor came, looked at it, said, oh, this looks really odd? Maybe they would have discovered some more deflections, and we may have been able to avert some of, at least maybe, loss of life in this disaster. So this is a citation of Suncoast. So this is Hub Steel, the steel people. Citation 1, serious, and talks about steel erection activities where steel beams on the 16th floor were not connected to columns on the 15th floor per the contract documents and did not meet specific load requirements, exposing employees and other workers at the job site to be struck by and crushing hazards. So I think that, yeah, that's the last of my citations. That gives you a little bit of an insight as to what might structurally have happened. It doesn't talk about what caused what first. This is from the video. You can see that this was a cascading set of failures. Something initiated it, and that as that top floor failed, it fell on other floors with perhaps not as young a concrete as the top floor, but still fairly high so under early strength, not full design strength, subsequently failing those, and so you have a series of collapses occur. So I mentioned that there was a one-alarm fire on the 28th that got this building back in national news, and at the time, January was the target instead of 21 instead of October 2020. Here's a picture of the smoke, and I've got a picture of, so we have most of the steel taken down. You can see that this is a pile of steel, and the burning construction materials was in this pile. And here is a crane boom that has the firemen. So they're actually squirting water from this cage onto the burning materials. So under current conditions, we're still behind schedule. It's still not complete. It should be completed by March 2021. And in mid-February, the City Council asked the City Planning Commission to consider revoking the conditional use permit issued to the developers, because now that we're close to having a clean job site with now 3 adjacent buildings more removed, so it's a bigger footprint that they can work with, because I didn't mention it before, but a couple of members of this development team own those buildings that are now no longer there. So the site it can grow in size. And here's a more recent shot. So this is just a couple of weeks ago, showing that they're down to just the reinforced concrete 7 floors, the bottom 7 floors that were the parking garage. And so you can see that it's now looking just like a regular old demolition site. I was thinking, well, the they people in our profession are going to take a look at this failure and ascertain the causes of it, and then see if there is some kind of a trend with other failures, and then that will allow our profession or associate professions to make modifications. And the more I looked into this, the more I found that that is not necessarily true. So, um, so I got to looking into how can we make that a more intentional process. And I came across something called Cross US, which is an entity funded and under the Structural Engineering Institute, which is one of the institutes of ASCE. So Cross US is part of an international cross organization, Cross International, that is located in the UK. So in the UK, I believe in probably 15 years ago, they looked at a model that is actually a US model in the aviation sector. So FAA has an entity that was stood up and actually is paid for, I believe, by FAA on the aviation side, and they've got an arm called the Aviation Safety Reporting System, ASRS, where anyone in the aviation industry that sees something that is a near failure, a near miss, they can report that to ASRS with no fear of their name being let out. The agency then ultimately learns all of these near misses, and so ultimately, hopefully, any type of large failure in the aviation sector of transportation, one that might entail fatalities or serious injury, those numbers of serious failures have been reduced by the work of this group. And so CROSS is based on that type of methodology. So you receive a report from someone, the report is processed, meaning all of the information that can identify where who and where are removed, comments are added, the report's published, and as you develop this library of reports, you can see some commonalities and start influencing change. So we have in the US over 900 reports in Cross US. This is the Cross International in the UK, there's one in Germany, there's one in the US, one in South Africa, and one in Australia. And there's talks with other places in order to stand up another cross organization. So the folks that are most active here with CROSS is Glenn Bell, former SEI president, and Andy Herman, former SEI president and president of ASCE. There's an expert panel that actually looks at all of these initial reports, redacts the information that they feel can remove all of and it's all done confidentially. And you can see some of the other folks. I actually interjected myself into this, and I don't know if the SEI board approved me, but I now sit on XCOM because I believe that this is an important work, because from my looking around and trying to ascertain if we're going to learn any lessons as a profession from this disaster that occurred in my backyard, and finding out that probably not, or not intentionally, not with any intent, I got involved. So this talks about the scope of the issues, where small events are important because they are precursors often to more major failures, and the more reports that the entity gets, the better we can then look for trends and then work to minimize the impact of these issues before we have serious failures and collapses. So right now the focus is on any civil structure that can be buildings, bridges, geotechnical dams, power transmission towers, industrial buildings, power plants, primarily in the U.S., but I talked about the location of the other cross, but cross U.S. will look at the entirety of North America. So far, it's not the other types of engineering, so mechanical machines, automotive, but cross UK just added fire. So and there's a move to actually broaden the scope. So this is the methodology, base report, depersonalization, de-identification of a lot of information, the expert panel reviews, then it's posted, and the base report and the depersonalized information is purged from the database before the publication. So confidentiality, of course, is critical because we want this to be no blame, so that people can feel comfortable in reporting these potential issues, and that it won't impact their relationship with their coworkers, their relationship with their employer or their client. They won't get in legal trouble, or there won't be some issue with insurance. So if you're interested, take a look at www.cross-us.org. That's the website. Please, if you see something on a job site that is unsafe, this is a way that you can report it, and that we can learn from it and perhaps eliminate someone else, some other worker, or the general public being hurt by a failure. So with that, I'll call it a day.
Thank you, Norma Jean. This is Jonathan Brower. I was wondering if you had any updates on the status of the lawsuit between the city of New Orleans and the developer.
There's multiple lawsuits, and I have been staying away from it. I've been pretty vocal, but I have chosen not to be an expert. So if I don't want to get too far into hazarding a guess or even looking at what's going on. So I've been staying away from the court system because I don't want to be subpoenaed. So I don't even know what they're doing.
So Norma Jean, this is Nancy Klein. Thank you so much for making this presentation to the Dallas branch, but also introducing us to the Cross US. Do you think something like this could happen again in New Orleans?
I think something like this could happen anywhere. Actually, after this happened, there was a structural failure in Houston. It was, well, outside of Houston, it was Katy. 3 workers died. It was a collapse of in a stairwell. So a lot of the cladding, the exterior cladding of that building had been put in place. And it's not a big tourist mecca, so you don't have people with their smartphones videoing all around them, just happening to capture the failure as it progressed, because you couldn't see the failure because the cladding was on the outside. But 3 people died in both of those, and that did not hit the national media hardly at all, if at all. Much more a local story. And so these things happen and you don't hear about it. You might hear about it on the news, but if you don't know the person, we get desensitized because you see so much of thank God not the major ones. They don't happen that often, but the next one has already happened. I'm sure if you dug around, you could probably find that there was a major building collapse that killed people somewhere in the world. So how do we stop that from happening as often?
Well, Norma Jean, I want to thank you for your time. I thank you for coming to speak with us and sharing your perspective on this disaster. We look forward to getting back in person, and maybe we can invite you out to Dallas in a year or so.
I'd love to see y'all in person. I look forward to it.
All right. Thank you, Norma Jean. If you have any additional questions you'd like to ask Norma Jean, please put those in the comment section below. Those questions and comments will be collected and emailed to her later on this month. Remember, if you would like a PDH for today's presentation, please visit our website at www.dallasasc.org or click on the link in the video description below. This link will remain active until the end of the month. The PDH certificates will then be emailed out to the email address you registered for the meeting with during the last week of March. This general branch meeting is also accompanied by 2 Institute technical presentations. The Geo Institute will have Fadi Faraj presenting on the Trinity Railway Express crossing the Trinity River. The Structural Engineering Institute also has a presentation by Daniel Baxter, a bridge engineer from Minnesota. Both of these presentations are available to watch on our Dallas branch YouTube channel and qualify for 1 PDH each. Next month's meeting is scheduled for April 12th and will be a virtual meeting that will be broadcast via our ASC Dallas branch YouTube channel. We'll have Dr. Valencia and Melissa Perez from the Texas Demographic Center. Thanks for attending the virtual Dallas branch meeting. I hope you all have a great week. With that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everyone.